Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Gronich of Statewide News Service and jbiztechvalley.com. We have a very, very special guest with us, Ms. Rachel Kretser, and I may call you Hebrew name Rachel, but Rachel Kretser is your name, Albany City Circuit Judge in the Criminal Division and the Criminal Court. Rachel, Can I call you first name or honorable?
Oh, absolutely.
I feel
call me Rachel.
It's good.
Albany City Court Judge. There's no circuit. It's
Right.
Albany
Right.
City
Albany
Court Judge,
City
Criminal
Court.
Court.
All right, get the
Okay.
name right. All right,
Okay.
good. The title
So,
right.
and Rachel's one of my favorite judges. I don't know too many judges
She
because
didn't
I don't
put
get
you in
into
jail,
trouble.
Mark?
And
Or
Mark
how's
is
your
one of my
brother?
favorite reporters.
There you go.
So maybe
So-
you let him off the hook after he robbed the bank?
No.
Then
No.
maybe. All right. I'll
So
leave you alone.
Rachel is a member of Beth Emeth,
Yes,
and
I
we've
am.
seen each other through the Jewish community over the years and developed a nice friendship. So, welcome to the Jewish View. I'm so happy to finally have you here.
And I'm
It's great.
delighted to be here.
So, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is your involvement in the Jewish community, but also as an elected official, being Jewish. And we don't see that too much in Albany County.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you really can count the number of Jewish elected officials on both hands, but over the long term.
In the past there has been.
Not so much. Harold
More.
Greenstein was a common councilman. Now you got Leah Golby on the city
DA,
council.
the DA.
Saul Greenberg.
Saul Greenberg.
Exactly.
The
He
DA
was
was-
very
Was a
wonderful.
long time, but it wasn't. It weren't that many. Arnold Proskin was a
Right.
judge, and he was an assemblyman,
good
and
one, yeah.
So, but that's what I'm saying. You can count them on
I
two
know,
hands.
maybe you're right.
And how many people? I mean, it's just. I kind of made a little list. We have Judge Larry Rosen. We had a
Yes,
town.
another wonderful judge who retired.
And we had a town judge in Guilderland, Steve Simon. He was there for many years.
yeah.
We have a federal judge, Larry Kahn, who's from Albany. We have Leslie
And
Stein.
of course, Judge Kahn is on senior status now.
Right.
Yeah.
And Leslie Stein is a good friend of yours.
A very close friend.
And she's
we are
with-
so lucky to have.
And
Judge
she's
Stein
with
on
City
the
Court.
bench. Well, she started on the City Court, and then
Right.
she moved up quickly to the Supreme Court, and now to the Appellate Division. And that's confusing to some people, but the Appellate Division in New York State is actually higher than the Supreme Court, the trial level. Supreme
Right,
Court.
and but it's still a mid-level court. It's an
Yes.
appellate. It's a mid-level court, but it's still a higher ranking, and it's like almost just below the Court of Appeals.
It is just below.
Just below. All right. I was hedging my bets. And then, in the assembly we have Phil Steck,
Yes,
who's local.
newly elected,
Rich,
relatively newly.
Rich Jacobson from the town of Colony. He's a county legislator,
Another friend.
and he was the Colony Democratic Committee chair for Colony. I think he still is. And then you have a judge in Colony, Norm Masry, and you have a judge in the town of Colony, Andrew Summers.
Andrew Summers, yes.
And then you have in Manans a village court judge who's Arnold Proskin's daughter,
Lisa.
Lisa Proskin.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Lisa
Another
Ann,
friend.
Lisa Ann or
Absolute-
something. Yeah, okay.
absolutely.
And then Arnold Proskin, who's a former judge, former assemblyman, former everything. Now he's in private practice, but he was.
And I've known him for years. So,
Great
yes.
guy for a Republican. No, just
Terrific.
teasing. And then Lenny Weiss.
Oh, goodness. Now, that was a loss when we lost Judge Weiss,
Well,
Justice Weiss.
he was
from
also-
he's still with us, thankfully.
Right.
Very much with us. But when he
you
had
lost
to
him from the
retire,
bench, yeah.
when we lost him to the bench, major loss. Yeah.
But not just that, but he was the Albany County Democratic chairman.
Absolutely.
Was he state chairman? No.
No.
He was with the Knights of Pythias. He was the Grand Chancellor of the Knights of Pythias, and that's sort of unheard of in the state order because no one from Albany really gets to that point. It's a downstate dominated lodge, and he rose up through the ranks and he represented the entire state to the next level of Pythians, which is called the Supreme Lodge.
Yeah, right.
But anyhow, and then you had Harold Greenstein, who was chosen by Mayor Corning to be the city alderman at the time for the 14th Ward, which Gary Demolowitz now represents. But Harold Greenstein was there for many years because Mayor Corning just anointed him. That's right. So that's really, and then you have the chief judge of the Court of Appeals, Jonathan Lippman.
You're right.
But again,
Well, I mean, they're
you can.
representative, Mark.
Well, when you
can't
rattle
say
off
they're
all
not.
those names, it sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
But when you consider the number of public officials
That's right.
overall in the capital
Not
district,
many.
it's a small fraction.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure exactly why, to be honest, because there are so many well-qualified Jewish attorneys. So why aren't there more Jewish judges? I'm really not.
Yeah, that's escaped me.
why.
That's escaped me also.
I think back to when I first thought about running for judicial office. I consulted one of the pioneering women on the bench, and she said, "Rachel, do you have such a thing as a Jewish bishop?" I love this, and I said, "Well, not really. We don't have somebody like that we have rabbis, but we don't have a Jewish bishop
Hierarchy,
as such,
there's no
that
hierarchy
kind of
like that.
hierarchy." So she said, because the bishop was really helpful in getting me elected. He just made people aware of her qualifications and made them think, made the political leaders think of her when they were thinking about people. They traditionally thought of the same white males. And so she said, that's what you need. And
Well,
so it would be nice. I did it without that, but it took an awfully long time. And I do think we need to be, I hope that the Jewish leaders will become more active locally.
well, one of the things that sort of surprised me is that Lenny Weiss, when he was head of the Albany
Like
County
Lenny
Democratic
Weiss,
Party,
exactly.
he didn't bring more Jews into. I mean, a lot of the Jews are committeemen. A lot of the Jews are behind the scenes, to get people elected, but they're not getting Jews elected. They're getting non-Jews elected who are appointed by the county committee. And the county committee didn't embrace to have a lot of Jews coming into the ranks. And I don't know why.
You have a good question, Mark.
You know?
I don't know.
And
We don't have an
I-
answer for it.
I wrote that story for the Jewish World asking that
Yes,
question, and
that was a good story.
no one really had an answer. It was really a mystery.
Well, let's use this opportunity to encourage all of the qualified Jewish lawyers out there to consider the bench.
Now, I
and
know
then also to encourage the Jewish community to back the people who decide to run, because running for political office, running for judicial office, I know from experience, it takes money, it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of support.
Now, how much money on an average does it take? Because you have certain restrictions. You can't badmouth an opponent. You have to talk positively.
I wouldn't want to in any event, frankly.
But whoever might be running, not you personally, but whoever might be
But
running.
that is one of the
and then
judicial ethical constraints
thing.
that
And you
we
have to talk about yourself in a positive way. Just state your background and what your thoughts are about basically what your qualifications are. I don't even think you can say how you feel about, let's say, gay marriage or abortion or anything like that.
No, we're not supposed to talk about
You're not
specific
supposed
issues.
to.
We're not supposed to go around saying things like, for example, I'm tough on crime, or I'm, any of that. Those kinds of representations are really inappropriate in a judicial race.
So with those limitations, you have lawn signs. You can put out maybe some mailing in one. You can just one
And
will
you
do
can
it.
speak publicly.
And you can speak publicly, but say very little. But at least the presence of you being out there on these forums is important.
And let people get to know you. And I
Right.
think when they get to know you,
So what is the money part of it? I mean, when you run, how many races now?
well, you
3?
have a treasurer. You're not supposed to know who is contributing to your
Right.
campaign. Although when people throw parties and you see who's coming, you get a general sense of who's contributing to your campaign. I never really knew. I never looked at, I wasn't supposed to, and I didn't look at the list of contributors
No,
to my
but
campaign.
but the amount of money that's raised.
The overall amount, yes, I know.
About how
it was
much?
30-something thousand.
So it's
That was 9 years ago now.
okay. So was it a 10-year term that you're on, or what?
I have a 10-year term. However, I was appointed the very beginning of January, the year before,
Right.
and so I got an extra year. So I have a total of 11 years
Okay.
before I
So you got
have to
another 2
run.
years to go before you got to run for re-election.
2.5, yes.
Oh,
You know, I
two
would
and a half.
question, you know, I mean, you're in the criminal division, you were saying tough on crime, and it reminded me, you know, I mean, you're a nice person, that's what I'm saying, and I just think of a criminal. Yeah, you know, 10 years, we'll put them over, you know, some tough.
And maybe
you
that's
know,
a perception
really.
that
I don't know, I
has
never saw you
kept
in court, they
women
never put me in
from, from being elected to criminal benches, because I was the first woman ever elected to a criminal bench in the entire 3rd Judicial District, which encompasses 7 counties
From
Albany
Sullivan all the
down
way
to
up to...
exactly, down to Sullivan, from
Right.
Albany down to Sullivan.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's remarkable to me that that I was the first woman ever elected to a criminal bench in that entire district, and possibly, whereas there are a number of women on the family court bench, for
Right.
example, and that may partly be a perception that women aren't.
You're not going to be tough on crime over
Right,
there, you're going to let everybody off.
And as those who practice in my court will tell you, that's not so. I try to be as fair and impartial as I can, but also there are consequences for criminal acts. And I want to make sure that people understand that there are consequences for criminal acts.
There are some judges who are really sarcastic up at the bench, and I won't mention names, but I've seen when I've observed different court proceedings, they're really sarcastic. Once in a while go over the line and they have to apologize and blah, blah, blah. But are you sarcastic? Are you polite? What's your temperament up at the bench?
I like to think that I have a very good temperament, and in fact, I don't know whether it's the yoga that I do, but I am, and people will say this, I am very calm in the face of sometimes, you know, it's a wild and crazy court sometimes. We hear 100 cases on average a day.
Really?
And
A day?
it is, people don't realize this. I have to speak almost like an auctioneer. I'll be taking a plea 1 minute, and I can give about 3 minutes to a plea, 3 minutes to the sentencing, 3 minutes to an arraignment, because I have to move the cases. And that's unfortunate, but that is the caseload that we deal with.
And how many days are you on the bench?
Oh, and that's another interesting thing that people don't realize. 24/7, our court is open 24/7 because defendants have to be arraigned within 24 hours. So
you can get a call at 2 in the morning and say, we need a judge, like we see on Law and Order, we need a judge to sign this. And
Yes. I was awakened in the middle of the night to sign a warrant in a murder case recently, for example, and that happens. That's part of the job.
That's right. Yeah, you
And
know it going in. So.
We divide it up, of course, but I work 1 weekend a month, approximately, and I work a third of the holidays, including Christmas, because I'm the only Jewish trial judge.
Well, you work Christmas and Easter, and they work Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So
that's true. Exactly.
You're on the bench,
we
or
cover
you're on
each
call
other.
like a doctor. My sister's a doctor.
I'm
so she
actually
doesn't
on
sit
the
there.
bench.
Yeah.
You're just sitting there?
We have to be
Not just
on the
sitting.
bench for arraignments, the mornings of all the holidays, and Christmas
Really?
morning, all these.
That's a tough job.
So you do 100 cases a day, let's
On
say,
a non-trial
average.
day.
On a non-trial. And how many, of Monday through Friday, how many days can I find you in the courtroom? Every
Monday
day?
through Friday,
Monday
unless
through
I'm
every
sick
day?
or on vacation, yes.
9 to 5, Monday through Friday,
No, 9 to 7.
9 to 7, Monday through Friday.
No, I mean, not every time,
Okay.
but I often work late.
And you could tell I've never been in your court. So I really
Now,
don't
the
know.
court isn't open. I
Thank
don't want
goodness.
to, I don't want to,
Thank goodness.
people don't, yes, want to see me professionally, given the fact that I'm a criminal court judge. But yes, our court is open, actually, from 8:30 until 4 with the new constraints, the budgetary constraints that we have. We have to close at 4 or request overtime. They frown on that because of the budgetary constraints. So, however, I'm still in court in chambers often until 7, even later than that.
You're in Albany County, so that's the budget. They're cutting it. I mean, you're.
Well, you're on
the
the state, you said
constraint.
you're on the state level.
This is state.
Well, no, I'm in a state court.
Right.
As opposed to the town courts. We are part of the state court system.
The city court?
The city courts, all the way up to the Court of Appeals, are
Is in
part
the
of the
state.
state
Okay.
court
And you say
system.
the constraints, they're not giving you more money, or they're keeping it flat? I mean,
Well, we've had flat budgets now for several years, and it's forced, we've lost in my court alone at least 4 clerks recently, court clerks, and we're unable to replace them. They don't allow us to fill any vacant lines now.
I wanted to bring out, it's interesting because, I don't know if this was your issue, but, of course, in the Orthodox circles, it's really the boys or the men who learn the Talmud, and the women were not traditionally learning the Talmud. But I know that this is from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I mean, he passed away 20 years ago, but he said that a lot of the women, they don't learn the Gemara, the Talmud, because of intricacies. I mean, you had life 100 years ago, 200 years ago in Europe. But he says now, and this was the Rebbe himself said it, the head of Lubavitcher Rebbe, that he said that since women are learning law, I mean, they're going to law schools.
And in
he
fact,
says,
50% of our law schools are now women.
Yeah, so he says if they're learning law, let them learn the Talmud. Because, I mean,
I was
if they
bat
weren't learning the
mitzvahed,
intricacies, yeah. I'm just saying, so it's interesting. So in our schools, in Maimonides, and in a lot of Lubavitcher schools, they are teaching the girls that, because, I mean, beforehand, I mean, not to get into the whole history, but you can imagine there wasn't the public school education, the private school, 100, 200 years ago in Europe. So the girls were just sitting at home and learning their economics, so to speak, home economics. But now that they're in, number 1, public school, number 2, they're going to graduate school and law school.
Times are changing.
So if they're learning that, why shouldn't they learn, the Talmudic law? So some people were against it, but then the Rebbe says, yeah, they should learn it. You should learn all kinds of laws. I mean, you can understand the intricacies. It's difficult for people, but if it's just not harder than law. I mean, obviously you know better than I do what law is, but I know the Talmudic law, I don't know the secular law. But I just want to bring that out, that, things are changing, like Mark is bringing out, and if this is a society we live in, and there's nothing really frowned upon anymore. It's just that...
Well, it's interesting that even now observant Jews or Orthodox Jews in the Hasidic community are getting into law enforcement. And they got to cut their beards, and they don't want to cut their beards, and it was a whole big brouhaha over, dress code or proper thing, because beards are dangerous, because a criminal could pull on
really,
it.
that's the reason they didn't want to
it's dangerous.
It was just dress code. That's
No, it's just dangerous. It's
when women first came into the legal profession and into the courts, there was a whole brouhaha about what women should wear and whether women could wear pants in court. Yeah. You remember, Mark? Yes.
I do remember that. I'm that old.
So
yes.
it'll evolve.
Yes. What do you think is the most difficult part of your job, besides moving the cases along every 3 minutes?
Right. Resources are always an issue. Caseload is always an issue, but that's not the most difficult part of the job. The most difficult part of the job is seeing, for example, crack-addicted, heroin-addicted mothers coming into my court, pregnant, yet again, and I'm looking at them and thinking, that baby has no chance, that baby has no chance. And what can I do? And I try, you try. And we're there on the bench because we think we can make a difference. And it sounds trite, but that's why I'm there. I had a high-paying job in private practice a long time ago. I gave that up to go into public service because I was hoping to make a difference. And we try, and sometimes we will have success stories. So yes, that's the most difficult part.
And
now let me tell you,
and rewarding on the other hand too.
That's exactly right. Let me tell you about the positive, and that is when I look down from the bench at a defendant standing before me with a smile on her face or his face, and a bright look in their eyes at one of those formerly addicted defendants, and then they hand up so proudly. They hand up their certificate of graduation from one of our drug treatment programs. And when I look at that, and when I see that look of pride, and it enables me to think that I have done something good, and it's why we get up in the morning, why we go to court every day.
Kind of want to come off the bench and hug them, right?
Yeah, you do. You actually do. It's very true.
I want to bring up because, I'm a rabbi, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a judge, to say the least. But in any case, I do deal with, we're like, sometimes we're the last resort. People are coming, they have problems, and we're trying to advise them, don't do that, don't be a nut, and you're going to get in trouble. And some people do get in trouble, and then they come running to us, help me, help me. And the court system, it wasn't used, so I'm sure that I could understand the situation, but it was just like when you're talking about being tough, which is important. There's some real weirdos out there that need to be locked up, and I do volunteer. I'm in the Jewish prison. I visit Jewish prisoners, and I know some real cases, to say the least. On the other hand, there's a room, and that's probably a hard decision, for compassion, where this woman was in trouble. This reminded me when you were saying about it, and they just said, listen, you go to Alcohol Anonymous, she's an alcoholic, she got in trouble this way and that way, and shoplifting, don't ask, but instead of just putting her behind bars, and she is doing very well. And we were just a little amazed. I said, you're going to get in trouble over here. They're not going to appreciate this in the court system. But I wasn't a lawyer in any case, and I didn't say anything, but the judge, said, listen, you need help.
We always try alternatives to incarceration first. And sometimes even twice, sometimes even 3 times. We'll try to give people every chance to turn their lives around.
But then they say judges are soft on crime when they do that.
Well, nobody's ever accused me of that.
No, not judges, I said, and just in general I meant that there's
seriously.
that impression.
I have learned over the years, and I think I'm fairly good at it, to assess the people who appear before me. And I can sometimes instinctively tell those who are more inclined to benefit from alternatives to incarceration, and some who, frankly, they just want to get away with what they can get away with.
I don't know if you can comment on this, so excuse me, because I didn't talk to you about this.
No, we haven't had any preliminary discussions.
So, education for the prisoners that the governor's talking about.
The college education.
We call it Con Ed, in that,
I didn't hear that one.
But the electric company down in New York City, Con Ed, and this.
I haven't studied the governor's proposal.
He didn't have a detailed proposal. He just said he wanted to. He said it cost $5,000 instead of $60,000, and $5,000 to educate the prisoners instead of $60,000 for incarcerating them, and then they can get a degree and go out. And now other people are saying, well, then if you have $5,000 for each prisoner, why don't you give it for tuition assistance program for non-offenders and people who are good in society? And why are you doing this? So there's that struggle. But I didn't know how.
No, and I can see both sides. There are hard working class people out there who are really pushing 2 jobs to try to get those kids into college, and
through college.
Went through college, and I put only one. I had only one to put through college, but boy, after he graduated, I went out and bought a nice car because all of a sudden I felt rich. It's expensive. But so I do feel for those working class people who would think to themselves, here I am breaking my back to put my kids through college, and if they go to jail, they get a free education. So that I understand. On the other hand, I can also understand where if someone is given an educational opportunity, they're less likely to recidivate. So it really is a balancing act, and it's a hard call.
It's a tough call, because that's what I think.
I would be very careful before throwing resources at every defendant. Let me put it that way. I would make sure that these are people who have earned in some way in their, in prison, have earned that privilege, and then perhaps consider it.
This was a trial balloon. I think he threw in the air to see if the legislators would applaud or criticize and see where it was coming from. So he didn't put a whole lot of backbone behind it to release to the public. He simply said, this is what I'd like to do, so therefore there's not really much research to do on this. It's a feeling.
This
It's a
governor
really
has been
emotional-
very successful with many of his ideas,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I
But it's-
certainly would want to study it, and I would certainly be open to it.
You would, yeah. Okay, because it makes a difference, and it does make a difference. So, what other, well, you know, how is the Albany City Court broken up in terms of criminal and civil?
Okay.
Like, who else is on the criminal court with you?
Gary Stiglmeyer is a colleague, and Will Carter is another colleague, both.
On criminal. But
On
aren't
the
they
criminal
also on
side.
civil?
No,
No.
no. We in Albany, like New York City, we are divided up criminal and civil.
Right.
And I don't do any civil.
Okay.
My civil colleagues don't do any
So-
criminal, except actually sometimes they'll cover us on the weekends for arraignments, but that's
Helena?
that's about it. Helena Heath Rowland.
Right,
yes.
she's civil.
She's civil.
Court, I mean.
Yes. Yes.
And
She's very civil also.
And who's the other one? Who's
Tom Keefe.
Oh, Tom Keefe, yes.
Yes.
And
those are the 5 judges
So those are
of
the
the
two.
Albany
So if you get a
City
traffic
Court.
ticket,
That's
or you
right.
get a parking ticket, you go to the civil court, and you got to.
Or if you have a small claims matter or
Right.
any number of landlord-tenant issues,
you
then
go
you
to
would go to
them,
them.
and otherwise you got 3 on the criminal court side.
Right. Now, we, on the criminal side, handle everything from violations all the way up to, well, I've handled a couple of murder cases just within the last couple of weeks, but at arraignment. And for warrants and for preliminary hearings, we handle all felonies. And we take misdemeanors to trial, and it
What's
just
this
keeps you
about
very busy.
adjudicating or plea bargaining before
Oh,
it
yeah.
gets to you?
Well,
is that something that's
with the volume-
being done too much, or is it just has to be done by volume, because of the volume?
It's a volume issue, and until they're willing to put more resources into the courts, it's
Okay.
going to be necessary.
Are you
Plea
a fan of
bargaining.
Law and Order?
I watch it sometimes,
Any
yes.
any of the versions of its SVU?
Yes,
or,
it's a very successful show. yeah.
And does it, on an abstract level, have any relevance to?
The way, when I watch these,
Yeah,
I always think to myself, boy, do I wish we had the resources that they have
Right.
to do, all this investigation, all of this. We don't, sadly. So plea bargaining is a necessary part of the court system.
well, they do.
What percentage is plea bargain compared to,
It's like 95%.
really
Yes.
that much?
Oh yeah.
Yes, I don't have the
So it's like the
exact
lawyers
percentage,
playing
but
judge.
that's
It's the
about
lawyers
right.
playing judge, which is maybe
And
why they
it-
don't want to be a judge. They want to play. They want to play
Well,
one
it
team.
is. It starts with the district attorney's office. We can't plea a case unless the district attorney proposes the plea. Then we approve it or disapprove it as judges.
Right.
But as the defendant approves it or disapproves it, they decide whether they want to go to
Have you-
trial or whether they want to accept the plea.
Have you
offer.
seen some outrageous plea bargains that you just couldn't deal with? That you just couldn't?
I have not. I certainly have not accepted all the plea
You haven't?
proposals
Okay, yeah.
put before me, but I have very good ADAs as a rule, and they make good common sense plea offers generally. They're also very young, some of them,
Right.
and so I, review what they give me, and I sometimes add some suggestions.
Okay, that's good to know. Because I don't know what the whole process is, except what I see on TV. I'm sure many of our viewers won't know. So I'm just kind of asking out of ignorance, you might say. Thank goodness. So, any?
I think that the time flew by.
It
and
certainly
I just
did.
I give blessings to people at the end, and I think you're not only, like you say, giving over to do good things for the people of Albany, but just as a Jewish woman, you're really a credit to the Jewish women, because there was, and I mean, if you read the prophets, Deborah, she was a judge, and so you're not really, maybe the
I'm not
first in Albany County, but not the first in Jewish history. And no, there's very great Jewish women. They're held always in the highest esteem. Just saying that's a whole subject in itself. But you are really an example of someone who can, be tough, but also be compassionate, and that's what a judge really has to be. And we only wish you good years with blessing, with good health in the future.
Thank you
Yes,
so much,
and
Rabbi,
thank you for
and
being here. It
thank
was a
you, Mark.
wonderful experience.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.